Good evening, everybody. My name is Theresa Gschwandtner, and I have the honor of hosting this product marketing, not product marketing, but product stories event this evening about PLG. I'm joined here tonight with Max and Spyros. My role here at Qonto is to run the product marketing team. I joined about 3 years ago. We were 2 PMMs at the very beginning. At this point, we're about 17, so we grew quite a lot. Before that, I was at LinkedIn and WeWork, doing mostly customer-facing roles and also in product before. But yes, maybe let's welcome first our guest, Spyros from YouSign.
Thanks, Theresa. Thanks for taking the pressure of starting the meetup. It's always a hard time. So thanks for having me as well. My name is Spyros. I'm a product manager at YouSign. I've been there for a year and a half now. Before that, I was working at Meilleurs Agents, for those that know the company, so very different industry. And I started at YouSign with the first team that was dedicated to PLG. So this is why I'm here, I guess, today to speak about that. And a small word about YouSign. So for those that are people aware of what YouSign does in the audience, or?
Yeah, many hands raised.
Very, very nice of you guys. So YouSign, for those that don't know what it is, it's basically a SaaS that helps mostly SMBs today sign and execute agreements in a fast and secure way. And we have around 17,000 customers today and growing every day. So very, very happy about that.
Nice one.
And yeah, I guess that's what I can say. And maybe Max, you want to take over?
Yeah, my turn.
Welcome.
So Maxime, I'm at Qonto since 5 years and a half. I have been in Mailjet and IBAN first before that. And I am head of products right now. Recently, I switched to a team called System and Monetization, where basically PLG is at the heart of the team. So I'm here to talk about that.
Cool. Thank you both, and thank you especially for you to come from the outside in. We know that's always a bit more of a hassle, so appreciate having you here. Cool. So where we want to start is actually very basic, but we've heard PLG thrown around a lot recently, and the big question is, what even is PLG, product-led growth? What does it mean to either of you?
Okay, I start. So first, it's a hot topic. Like you can hear it in it's very trendy at the moment in San Francisco. You can hear it everywhere. PLG, PLG, PLG. So I think it's important, also to talk about it. And I will start by saying what it is not in terms of products. And basically, what's not PLG is, for example, when you use a product and you have a big button, talk to a sales. That's not PLG. So it's not self-service, it's friction, and basically PLG is what is reducing the time to value as much as possible. And at Qonto, we started with PLG because
we were just saying that.
Yeah, so at the very 6 years and a half ago, when we launched Qonto, we launched with a digital onboarding, which was basically the main differentiator with traditional bank. In traditional bank, you had to go to agencies like branch with all of the shareholders of your company, bringing all of your files. Then they spend weeks to review. Eventually, one document was missing, and at the end, you had access to your bank details. And basically, the edge of Qonto when it was launched in 2017 was to digitalize all of this and do this in 2 to 5 minutes. So that was, for me, PLG, reducing the time to value.
Reducing time to value and taking out the human touch a little bit. Yeah. Is it okay? That's super interesting, Spyros.
Yeah, pretty funny because for us it's the kind of the opposite story because we started from sales led, so we didn't have any self-service, so people were not able to buy the product by themselves. So we always had a sales team doing the work, the heavy lifting, let's say. And for me, PLG in itself is maybe more like a transition, let's say, or at least that's how we went through it at YouSign, because you always start from one part or the other. So you always start from SLG and at some point gonna put some PLG into your strategy, or you can start from PLG like Qonto did and maybe then add sales team. But for me, it's part of a company strategy. So it's not like only a product initiative. It's much bigger because it's changes so many things in the company. Like organizationally, there's a lot of things changing. You're changing the job of some people in the company that are targeting other type of personas as well. So yeah, I'd say it's mostly a company strategy that puts the product where it brings the more value. So if it's like in acquisition, then it goes in acquisition. If it's in retention, then it goes into retention. But basically, it's leveraging the product as much as possible to generate revenue in a profitable way. Because, of course, the end goal, for me, at least from what I understand from PLG, is to be profitable at some point. And the easy way, but not that easy actually, is to go through PLG.
Super nice. And actually, I was going to add to that because, yeah, PLG is not just on the product, but it is beyond. But you have the product at its core. And for those of you who speak a bit of the marketing lingo also, obviously you also want to reduce the CAC, the customer acquisition cost, because you do need to, you can limit the amount of human interactions that you need to get to acquire. So actually on that comment you just made there, maybe you can continue. At YouSign, you just mentioned already you can use PLG for acquisition, retention, potentially upsell, additional revenue creation. What was your focus at YouSign and why?
Yeah, so a very important thing I think is to have focus because it's a huge topic. So it's really hard to like grasp it and know where to start. For us, the beginning was just like taking the AARR. I don't know how many R's there are usually in that funnel, but the whole thing we're saying, okay, we start by acquisition, then we go on activation, then we work on retention, on revenue, et cetera, et cetera. Wow, it's a party going on. And then we just like kind of created a first roadmap where we had like every part of the funnel and saying, okay, what can we do in 1 quarter? Can we work on acquisition? Can we enhance acquisition? Okay, then after we've reached like this milestone and this milestone for us on acquisition is like first creating a self-serve channel because we didn't have a self-serve channel. Once we move to that, what's the next step? So, okay, we're going further down the funnel. And this is kind of like in a year and a half, we went through the entire funnel. And right now we're actually working on retention because we brought in a lot of customers through the self-serve channel. And the idea is how can we retain them better and how can we make them grow as well? Because the audience that we actually got was people who are not paying that much at YouSign, with the basic plans. But the idea is to grow with the user as well. And I think this is one of the main challenges that we currently have today.
Maybe a quick follow-up question so that the audience can imagine, tactically speaking, what does a self-serve channel look like? Are we talking, simply speaking, start your free trial button on the website? Or obviously, I'm sure it wasn't that straightforward.
I wish it was that simple, but yeah, no. Very concretely at the beginning, there was no like payment page, for example, at YouSign. So you could not enter a credit card to buy the product. So this is like the first thing, like how do we have the tools to create a payment funnel? How does this work? So this was like the first thing that we did. And then it was actually the work of, I think maybe 6.5 months on working on the sign-up onboarding funnel because the whole sign-up funnel was created in a way that we identify the customers that we want to call back. So we had a lot of information that we need in a sales-led environment, but that we don't actually need in a product-led environment. So a lot of discussions around the phone number. Okay, if I'm a PLG persona and I'm never going to talk to a salesperson because I'm going to pay €9 a month, why do I need to give my phone number? But the thing is that on the other side, the company is built around that. So we have like people calling back those leads, and what do we do with those people? How do we adapt their compensation? How do we bring the heavier leads? And I think this was like the hardest part, I think, from the whole transition is finding the right balance between putting the self-serve leads in the self-serve channel, so the whole onboarding on that persona, all while trying to identify the people that we want to call back. And for that, we did a lot of A/B testing, both on the product, but also on the, let's say, more ops side of the thing. because we actually A/B tested what would happen to a lead if he was called back by a salesperson or if he was left alone on the self-serve funnel. And this kind of created a very sane discussion saying, okay, you have like a lead that's not paying too much at YouSign. We have that conversion rate on the self-serve funnel, that conversion rate when he talks to a sales. Okay, you know, it's quite objective. We can decide and we can talk it through.
That's really interesting because I feel like we are almost doing the opposite, trying to adapt the funnel to make it more a sales-led motion. We can talk about this later maybe. But Max, I'd love to get your perspective on the work that we've been doing at Qonto at the moment, especially more on the flywheel effect. Maybe you want to talk about this a bit with the audience?
Yeah, that's a big one. I wanted to react first on what you said. So I come back to the time to value, and there are two types of value. You have the value to customer and value to shareholder. So basically usage and monetization, something like that. There is one principle at Qonto is that you cannot monetize or bring like a revenue if you don't have adoption. So usage always precedes monetization. But before usage, you cannot like also grow the usage if you have a very bad retention. So in the order, it's like you fix in the R framework. You start by fixing the retention, then you work on discoverability and activation adoption, and eventually you increase the ACV and you monetize. You have another acquisition part. We can talk about it later. That's about reducing the CAC, cost of acquisition, through virality referral. So, talking about the flywheel. So this is a thing as well at Qonto. That's actually the reason why we created this team, system and monetization. So a little story behind this is that for the past 3 years, we have invested a lot in Qonto in building like a lot of financial tools on top of business banking, and like we spend like it's like 10 type of feature overall to work on invoicing, spend management, to work on bookkeeping, and we delivered a lot of features, a lot of things. But overall, after 3 years, like adoption was not really what we expect. When we look like an investment of 3 years and like a dozen of type of feature worth like I won't say the figure, but it's like big numbers in terms of investment. So basically, when we analyze this, why does the adoption like is so low? And in our strategy of building the all-in-one, like all capability in one financial platform, basically we started to build all of the capabilities, but we totally forgot the in-one. We totally forgot like the cohesive aspect of the product. And there is one thing that's like, why do you choose an iPhone and not a Xiaomi phone? Like if you look at the list of features, the Xiaomi phone are a better camera. They have a better processor eventually. And the iPhone, like it's in terms of feature specification, is performing less better. But they have something more. You have the cohesiveness of central storage. You have the UX that is consistent everywhere on all of your device. And you will pay more for that. So that's a bit like the rationale that we ended up. And then we created the system and monetization. The goal of system and monetization is basically to invest so that the business banking, but also all of the financial tools start to talk together as one tool. Like when you create an object here, you create an object there. And this is requiring a lot of investment. And it's requiring us also to change the mindset. And when you build a feature, you don't stop when you release the feature. Actually, it's requiring us to work a little bit more. Sometimes it's 1 month more, 2 months, so that you make the feature not only work, but work with the system. So then Flywheel.
Maybe give an analogy. I always think about Disney when Steve speaks about Flywheel.
I'm not, but
no.
No. Yeah, basically, Flywheel. You know, it's this. Imagine like an immense wheel. Like it's very hard to like start turning the wheel. Like it's super hard to init the wheel. But imagine this wheel like is throwing a little power, and you start turning it more and more. At one point, you will hit inertia points where the little power will produce basically less input than output, and the wheel will turn faster and faster. That's exactly the flywheel. And the flywheel, basically, say in other words, it's like, so it's a framework a bit famous in PLG, but it's in another metaphor, it's the marginal gains. It's basically, you will start by improving 1% of your product, and together, multiple marginal gains improvements will compound and will bring like much more than 1%.
Just for everyone who doesn't speak in frameworks, maybe to give you guys an example. First of all, I think it's funny because the way that we introduced it at Qonto was to think about Disney's flywheel effect. So if you think about when Disney releases a film, they have a new ride in their theme park. They have merchandise that you buy. So really using all of your outlets to promote that one launch that you did, and then to your point, it compounding over time. And maybe to give one example that is very successful that you guys recently worked on, when we built our accounts payable solution, same thing, we had some issues of discoverability, we didn't get new users to adopt, but we actually we tied it back to the transfer flow. And so everybody's paying someone through transfers, so this was the perfect opportunity to highlight the fact that you can actually just drop your invoice and all of the details are automatically filled so that you can execute your transfer faster. And you really see on the adoption curve how crazy it spikes thanks to this flywheel effect of integrating transfer and accounts payable. Cool, maybe to add on more from an acquisition standpoint, in product marketing where we're using PLG in particular is two elements for acquisition. On one hand, virality. And so depending on the product you're working on, I mean, we're very lucky at Qonto, and I realized that we didn't even do an intro of what Qonto is. We just assume everyone knows. But we're very lucky that we have an NPS of 75. So our customers love our product. And so we benefit from that by pushing referral. And so we've played around with numerous triggers. So for instance, when somebody shares us an NPS back and is happy with the product, this is a perfect time to ask them, hey, do you have anyone else you might want to refer? Or for example, if you're paying for a transfer at Qonto, you have a certain amount of transfers included. And then when you go beyond that, you have to pay extra. There's also an opportunity to push because Qonto to Qonto transfers are free. So in that very moment, you can be like, wait, are you paying your supplier? Convince them to move to Qonto and you will no longer have to pay for these transfers. So just a couple of examples of how we're using that with regards to referrals. It's been very, very helpful to grow to continue growing our business. And then on the other hand, something we've been recently trying that's been super successful is actually, it sounds very simple and kind of silly that we haven't done it till now, are product tours. So going back to the comment you shared earlier, Max, with regards to getting the time to value needs to be really quick. I need to understand immediately how this product can help me. Having product tours at the right kinds of pages on our website. So again, not top funnel, but really more so in that consideration phase already, have really, really helped impact our conversion rates and therefore our contract signs that we've generated. So I would also count that as PLG because we're using the power of our beautiful product to sell more.
Yeah, maybe on the virality part, I think you're right. It's probably where it's more obvious that it's PLG. We actually tackled this topic quite late in the history of like the PLG transformation of YouSign, let's say. When you think about YouSign, it's like a viral product in itself because you're actually sending a document to someone else that's probably never heard of YouSign. And we're like, okay, so this is how Calendly grew. This is how Typeform grew. Can we do the same? And these are experiments that we ran maybe like a month or two ago. And it's actually a huge challenge to work on virality that is not referral because you might think that it's something that is free because you're saying, yeah, okay, so I'm just going to send a document to someone, the person is going to sign the document, and afterwards there's a screen saying, okay, you can sign up for the free product. But actually, when you have like all the tools that you're using in your product that are actually pricing on monthly active users, monthly tracked users. The more users you're going to add to your product, the more you raise like the hidden costs of a user. And basically this is something that we spend a lot of time estimating before going on to virality, always thinking that PLG is never free, so you can always find like the costs, and I think this is what is the beauty of PLG, like from a PM standpoint, is that you really get into the business part and the financial part of the product. And this is something that was hugely beneficial for YouSign, like the virality experiments that we were running. We had like conversion rates of maybe 2 or 3% from signer to signing up for the product, and conversion later on. But when you think about it, the cost we spent to acquire those customers compared to all of our, let's say, paid campaigns and Google Ads campaign is like ridiculously low. So actually reducing the CAC thing is, yeah, it's very efficient. The thing is, you have to factor in the hidden costs of having a free user. And for us, it was kind of a discovery of seeing, okay, so a user that is using the product is actually quite expensive when you add up all the tools that are actually pricing on that user. So it was kind of also of a revelation of saying, okay, PLG seems like a nice thing, but it should always be like confined or constrained to something that's financially sane in the end, because the goal is to be profitable. So if you keep increasing the costs, then it will be profitable.
So what did you guys decide in the end? Do you have virality, or do you have it only for certain users?
Yeah, that's it's a very good question. We started like very small, so we targeted like a small part of the audience to like display this kind of sign-up screen where they can actually sign up for the product. But at some point we said, okay, we're putting small amounts of people in the product. A very small percentage is converting. If we keep on going like that, we're gonna like wait for a year in order to have like significance on the result experiments, and we could not wait a year. So the stage at which we are on right now is we actually did like a huge boost. So we opened it up to everyone just to get a lot of people in the product. And now we're kind of monitoring the behavior of those users in the product and saying, okay, see you guys back in 5 months. If we've reached this conversion rate, we know that we're profitable on the whole operation. If not, then we have to decide if it's something that we're just going to do for the brand image that it provides, or if we're really doing it for the financial reason and the conversion. But actually, there's a lot of product opportunities around that, because we usually had a lot of users signing with YouSign and not necessarily finding their documents, because it was always sent via email, so they had to look in their inbox. And it was now with this virality thing, you can actually use YouSign as a way to kind of store the documents that you've signed with YouSign. And it's also like a product opportunity in that way. And it's pretty interesting because the experiment gave us kind of like the confidence to say, okay, maybe we can move on something like that.
Yeah, I like what you said, because you're talking about referral, which is a way to get acquisition, but it's financially incentivized. Virality is the best in terms of cost of acquisition. Like it's lowering, it's €0 of acquisition. So we have been thinking, I started having a bit of theory on virality. And before talking about the cost of the virality, actually, the way I think about virality is you are, let's see, concentric circles, like you see on LinkedIn, like circle 1, network like circle 1, 2. In your ecosystem, in your first network circle, basically to drive virality, the first thing that you must do is that the experience of the product in this first circle must be radically different from the people in circle 2. So that you want the person that you already know in circle 2 to join the circle 1, to be part of the ecosystem, so that you can benefit and they can benefit from this first experience. So it's the first driver for virality, and then you can reach circle 3. But I like your analysis, like what you're saying about the cost of building this, and also about the fact that adoption first, and then we can monetize eventually, but without any usage, it's complicated to generate revenue.
Yeah, we'll see in 5 months. Maybe we turn back. I don't know.
We'll be back here.
We'll be back maybe in
back.
5 months, yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, Max, with regards to LinkedIn. So exactly that concept. I'm sure all of you guys know that when you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you can't actually really see another person's profile. So this is exactly the kind of circle one, circle two. On that topic, what are your guys', let's say, most inspirational players when it comes to PLG? Like, who do you look at? Who do you think has done a great job so far?
Yeah, I have one very controversial. So it's Atlassian with Slack. So basically, they have so Slack had 1 year and 2 years from now they launch a beta version, and basically Atlassian use this beta version of Slack, and whenever you are sharing a link in a Slack channel, and you have someone in the channel that does not have access to Jira, it was asking you, do you want to invite it to Jira? And then Jira were paying per seat, obviously. So it was very well done for Jira, despite the image. It's really a kind of the product-led growth that is driving adoption first and then monetization.
Yeah, and I think Atlassian is a perfect example because they put the first salespeople after having reached, I don't know how much revenue, but the crazy number. So obviously it worked for them. Yeah, for me, maybe the companies that are doing PLG the best are the ones that are kind of still alive and have crew hugely. So I mentioned before Typeform and Calendly. There's also Loom recently that had a huge type of growth. It brings other types of problems because Loom, for example, now is hugely dependent on people sharing Looms in other, let's say, type of environments, so Slack, Microsoft Teams, and all the things. So it actually complicates tracking as well a lot. So I'm not sure I want to be a PM at Loom right now handling these topics, but these are, let's say the companies that for me were kind of pioneers in the PLG, more of the virality part of PLG. But there are so many newsletters from Elena Verna, Cal Poyar from very famous VC funds sharing crazy success stories on PLG. What I always find kind of funny is that it always seems like it happened overnight, and you actually see the amount of experiments that they kind of ran through their entire lifetime. Honestly, it's crazy, but I mean, this is what worked. And for me, the important thing is also that it has to be in the culture that you accept testing and change. And this actually, the faster you go on that, the best it works. And one part that it's not often mentioned in the competitors or the people that we look up to on PLG is the organizational part of PLG. And I mean, when we started talking about PLG at YouSign, I read all the books about PLG and stuff, and nowhere is there a playbook of, okay, how do we adapt compensation of the sales team based on the introduction of a self-serve funnel, or how do we account for that? And I think this is something that is kind of misrepresented, and it's actually the hardest part. So the product part is hard, but it's not the hardest. The entire thing around it is very hard. For us, what worked is that the entire company had a vision around PLG. So for us, the executive committee was fully onboarded on PLG, and they were the ones that actually said, okay, we're going in. And at so many moments, in the transformation, it was hugely useful because we were kind of at a standpoint of saying, okay, the product says that this works, and okay, but the sales team is actually thinking that it's not. But at some point you have to decide, and knowing that you want to go towards PLG is a superpower, because you know that it's going to take time and it's going to probably need a lot of investment. So having the executive committee onboarded is a huge gain.
You kind of already jumped into the next question. Do you want to react on that?
Yeah, because it's my pain right now. So I joined Qonto because I know how to build a core banking system, very complex system, And right now, like it's very complicated to implement a PLG system. And for the main reason is that you are not owning all of the bandwidth, all of the resources of the company. Yet you need the system to work very cohesively. And as I said before, you need like for all of the team to spend a little bit more. But the little bit more, it's marginal. Like the impact is marginal. It only compounds when you reach the inertia point, and when you have at least enough part of the system. But the thing is that each team is actually prioritizing based on the impact of their own features. So it's extremely hard to prioritize basically what's important versus what is urgent. Like my OKR, my short-term next feature that has a certain impact. And without seeing the big picture, it's very, very hard to prioritize. So you actually think that when you start really to implement it as a system everywhere. But yeah, actually a challenge that I haven't cracked yet, but I'm on it.
So you guys already jumped into the challenges, which I think, just to repeat from generally what we said earlier with regards to hidden cost, organizational structure, how do you have the right support? How do you then know how to even build the structure internally? I liked your comment on the compensation for sales. How should that be adapted? Do we even adapt it? How do you find the right balance between SLG and PLG? What if you're making a shift from one to another? I'm trying to think. I mean, we have many others to add also, because similarly, from on the growth side, we're also dependent sometimes on what happens inside the product. So if we want to do additional virality or referral, we need to work with the product. We might need to adapt pricing. So exactly to your point. So maybe instead of leaving our audience with all these challenges and feeling like we can't ever achieve that, how about we discuss like what are the steps to take if somebody's trying to implement a PLG strategy?
Yeah, maybe I can kind of start from the challenges that you mentioned. I'm not sure there's like a playbook of how to start PLG, but there are some things that we encountered when we started working on PLG. So the first thing that we were discussing it before, is that we didn't have a team dedicated to PLG and to self-serve before at YouSign. So it was some kind of topic that is cross-team, but not in one team. There's not necessarily a KR that is associated with it. So the first step for us was say, okay, this is an investment that we want to make, so we're putting a team on the topic. So it's a huge message, because you have like a whole team of developers, a product manager working 100% on that topic, and their goal is to deliver the roadmap of the transition. So putting focus on one team and saying this is an important topic. Of course, the prerequisite for that is that you have EXCO approval, because you're gonna probably need it a lot during the whole journey. And we had the same issues with like growth and product. How do we work together? How do we have the same objectives? We had at the beginning objectives on the growth team for the sales assisted kind of pipeline. So when we're talking about self-serve, it's people who are buying the product on themselves, but the sales assisted part is the people that are going to be called back by the sales team. And we had a growth team who had incentives on the sales assisted part, and we were working on the self-serve part. But at some point we needed to work together because they're handling the entire acquisition funnel. So the thing that changed our lives literally was saying you have the same incentive now, and your incentive is on revenue from that channel, and align yourselves, get what needs to be done, but you're both going to be incentivized on revenue. And this is like super new for a PM as well, because for me at least it was a new thing, because it was also the first time that I was incentivized on revenue. So no, it's usually a sales thing to be incentivized on revenue. So we kind of switched and we were like, okay, we're product, but we're also sales. So we were looking at our dashboards every day. Are we making the targets? Are we reaching the targets? And I think it kind of created like a connection as well with the sales team, saying, okay, we're not here like to get the leads that you could get. We actually are here to free time for you to spend on like the important leads. And we're kind of working towards the same thing, which is revenue, and revenue aligns everyone, which is very, very easy. So I guess this is like the second thing that, maybe the third on PLG strategy, is to give like as much ownership as possible to the team working on it. And for us, this worked as well because we are organized in impact teams. So I know not all companies are organized this way. There are companies where we have feature teams working on one product and enhancing the product. We were actually an impact team, so the entire goal of the team is to reach the KR. So it gives like a huge freedom on the scope of things you can touch. So this created like discussions with very different teams, but actually it was our objective, so it was easier to communicate with other teams. And I think this was also like a key factor in like succeeding, at least, or trying to succeed in the PLG part.
So if I summarize, it is obviously making it a company priority, having the right resources, having the right incentives set up, and then tactically speaking, going back, and also what from my experience, I guess it would be making sure that you have a product that can be closest to the value. So what we talked about a little bit before, but it would be like a freemium model, so some sort of opportunity to test something for free, and then having the pricing structure. I think these are points you didn't mention just now, but I just want to make sure that we're clear on having something that then you can do a self-serve checkout. If you don't have that element, it's going to be very hard to do PLG.
Yeah, and maybe the two last things also are like communicating success early, because you're going to work on a project that's kind of like weird for a great part of the company. So communicating very often on...
You need to prove your worth.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like really important because it's really easy. I think most companies like try PLG, then don't see success or don't try to analyze the failures in a way that proves success. And they just kind of, flatten out at some point and stop. So this is really important. And the last thing is the data infrastructure part of PLG is like huge. It's like, for us, it was like a huge box that took like 3/4 on a year. Like we need to work on data infrastructure because it's an enabler for everything you're gonna do in PLG, be it like tracking success, like revenue based on the self-serve channel, or actually creating all the personalization that you need in the product to succeed in PLG.
Or gathering learnings. I mean, you're giving something away for free, so you need to know how is that working, how are people interacting. Max, what would you add in terms of how we did it in Qonto? We're obviously a slightly bigger beast.
I think we can come pragmatically. We can come back to the story. Like first, having self-service acquisition, like the onboarding funnel. I talked about it earlier. Then I think when you have a product, it's very important to focus first on the retention. Like you cannot start PLG and start trying to monetize something that is leaking customer. So before starting, like having a pretty decent retention. And then like usage precede monetization. So it means like activation, adoption, eventually discoverability to boost all of this. Once you have adoption, you can monetize it, increase the ACV of the customer, change the pricing eventually, and it will have the biggest leverage. On the side, you can try referral and virality, and the loop is closed. Like it's acquisition, back to acquisition.
Yeah, so I think that one part that maybe isn't as obvious is the data part that we need, not just from in the product usage that we just discussed, but also from the funnel, from the very top of the funnel. So visitors, conversion on the website, and so on. Cool, so not an easy feat. I think we're at time with regards to the questions I'm allowed to ask, which means I can open it up to the audience in case anybody has specific questions for any of us.
Hello, thank you guys for everything. I was wondering, like, what kind of tool are you using at YouSign for the data analytics?
You mean tools, right?
Yeah, with the
there
big
are
S.
a lot of tools. So let's say the first infrastructure thing on the data side that we implemented was Segment, like a CDP. I think it was like a key thing because it enabled us to kind of spread all business and product data into our different systems. So the CRM, the customer relations, so Intercom. We're also using Intercom for a lot of the product tours that we were talking before. So this is like the basic structure. Then we have a lot of, so we have a data lake with all the data around it. And we actually push some of the data in other tools via reverse ETLs. So we're taking the revenue, for example, the source of truth remains the data from like the financial tools. And we're also using a mix panel for like product analytics, connected, of course, via segment. But actually, the great thing is that we started using mix panel only in the product manager team, and now it's spreading in the product team more widely. Not later than yesterday or last week, we had like a product marketing manager from the team communicating on like conversion rates in mix panel for the virality, and it's like a huge thing for me that the culture of the product analytics spread, and yeah, I think that's the basic tools that we're using. I'm not sure we're using HubSpot as well for like the capturing the leads and the acquisition part. It's very hard to maintain, to be honest. So it requires a lot of work, and it took us a lot of time at the beginning to kind of change these tools to adapt to the self-serve channel, because we had to make splits between what is self-serve and what is sales-assisted at multiple tools. So we had to do it on HubSpot, we had to do it in Salesforce, we had to do it at like many places. And yeah, we're very, very glad to have like a good data team working on those topics, and they were hugely, beneficial in the strategy.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much. So I wondered, you talked a lot about the acquisition side, and then now you are working on adoption, and how the adoption strategy would change whether we are coming from a PLG or an SLG motion, or would that change in any way?
So I will give you an example. We spent, I think, last quarter, 2 months working on, like it's about activation and adoption, working on empty states. You know, the empty states are the state that when your product is, you have no data in the product, like you just join the product, you have no data, and we work like 2 months just in discovery, like thinking about like how we can like give an insight of what value, the perceived value of the usage of the products, and so that we can, and without any friction as well, like removing eventually all of the friction regarding the upsell, the validation of your accounts, this type of things. And so this is one example, but you have plenty other type of example in the world of discoverability, like getting started tours, for example, and also like investing a little bit more in the feature. We drive indirect usage, basically while connecting the feature together. Like the example about account payable and bill pay. You use bill pay, but on the other side, you also use account payable. It starts to enrich the other side of the product.
I would just add from the sales side, I think that where we're not at just yet with the product side, which we would like to work on more, what we can do on the sales side is a bit more use case-based adoption. So, you know, again, as Max mentioned, we have a lot of different potential product bricks, and so people come to us for many different reasons. And so at this point in time, the onboarding experience and the adoption experience is quite generic. Where we can be a bit more thoughtful is in sales, because we understand what type customer they are, and so we can give them a bit of a different type of onboarding experience for the product. So I think right now that's probably the big difference between product and sales, but just to clarify, product is the 99% of the time the better, like the driving adoption. That's why empty states is a huge impact.
No, I was about to say that we also worked on empty states very recently.
We love empty states.
Yeah, everyone loves empty states. So yeah, and I maybe to add on that, what worked also on like the adoption part is making it a topic once again. We are lucky to have like a product marketing organization at YouSign where we have like a PMM that is kind of expert on adoption topics, and this is hugely helpful because when you're working, we were talking before about you launch the feature and then you have to do the extra mile to go on the adoption part and work a little bit more on it. Well, we have like a PMM that's going to be there and say, hey guys, we can't move to something else right now because the adoption is not there. So we have to focus on that. Yeah, I guess the collaboration between PMM and PM on these adoption topics is very, very insightful because there's a lot of marketing knowledge that has to go into the product, and usually it's more on the product marketing side. And yeah, I think working together on these topics is like hugely beneficial and works well with PLG.
I think that was a learning for us in the empty states because we used to have empty states that were quite descriptive. So it was like, okay, here is a place where you can drop your invoices. And then we've collaborated really nicely on these empty states to be a bit more pushy and salesy. So you'd be like, save 7 hours if you drop your invoices now and benefit from automated OCR technology that fills your information. So it was a bit more with the why, why should you be doing that? And a bit more aggressive in the empty states. So any other questions?
Thank you. How the PLG strategy influences product design decisions? And because you mentioned the collaboration between PM and PMM, but what about the PM and the product designer? And you mentioned data. Do you also validate or invalidate a certain flow, like before it goes into mixed panel? If you prototype and test it out beforehand? Questions is for both of you, if you can.
Yeah, what's really interesting is that we radically change on product design side, and because now what we do is that we think system. We don't think like just the feature. We think how the system should behave. System of empty states. System of discoverability. So we build system, and actually it requires us to slow down. Like that's why we spend like 2 months on empty state. Slow down, and the product manager is there to make the inventory 360 system tour. Then the designer is also participating in making the current situation and like mapping all of the system. So yeah, that's big pieces. That's part of my problem at the moment. That's really big pieces when you have to implement a system. Like it comes with a heavy cost. Yeah, that's on the product designer, product manager side. I can answer with this learning about the system.
Yeah, and maybe on the product designer side, it usually requires some kind of different. It's the same design skills for me, but it's like a kind of a different way to design the product because you're integrating like bigger parts of marketing and sales into the product, and it requires kind of a business sense that you get into the designer. So we're very lucky to have like very great design team at YouSign, and I know that the business sense in the design is sometimes can be hard to grasp because you're always thinking about the user, but actually at some point you also have to think about the business, because if you don't have the business, you don't have the user. So I think that was a change in kind of mindset. I don't think there was a change like in the design skills and the in themselves, but in the collaboration that we have with the designers at YouSign, at least they're integrated into the team with the developers. So they're sometimes handling topics that are outside the team, but Like they spend almost 100% of their time on the topics and talking with the PM, the engineering manager, and they're very, very curious about data. Could be counterintuitive, but actually for a designer, I think at least it's really reassuring to see that what you design is actually working, is used, and you get feedback from your PM on that, and it actually creates another kind of flywheel into collaboration, let's say. And for the data part, we haven't cracked it yet. I think we're almost there, but we tried various things. We had like a dedicated product analyst in the team. Then we had like rituals with that product analyst on our specific topics. But yeah, of course, now every time we design like a feature or a flow, we always think about how do we track the funnel, or how do we track the whole journey, and we almost think about that before we do the wireframes, and we think about it very early, and it's very helpful because you just launch the feature and you've already visualized the whole funnel in your head, and you just have to plug it in and you get data super fast, and it's very reactive. You know, you just push the feature, you get feedback from the data, and you're like, okay, now we can iterate, and then you kind of get into a good, let's say, flywheel of developing and iterating on the features.
Maybe to add something that is it working yet? Maybe to add something that the team is working on with you guys, is from Carla was telling me about, actually using design for kind of this feeling of success and this feeling of, it's maybe more tied to virality, but I don't know if you guys know on Slack, I think they do this super well. When you have a huge amount of unreads, the moment you're finished, you have a really nice design that's basically like, you're caught up, no worries, like you're good. And I think these moments of pleasant kind of engagement with the app also help with regards to virality. So we're doing that at the moment in the design system, and then also we're working with sound. So when you send a transfer, like, you know, like things like this, I think are also really cool ways of leveraging design for PLG.
Yeah, it's about, so good product is about two things. It's functional value and emotional value. Like it's, and basically here it's investing a lot into the emotional value, like having video, haptic, things like that. Like you can play a lot with that.
As much as we can in financial services, but we try.
And
I heard today. So it's there is a competitor called Anna Bank, something like that. Or they have a sound when you receive a transfer, when you receive money. Yeah, it's a dog or a cat, like meow.
Why wouldn't you do like?
They made a video. It's not full, huh? Like they made a video, and you can choose the sounds of any transfer you receive. That's crazy. They push it.
We should try at YouSign maybe on sending the document with the dog. I don't know. But maybe just one last thing on the design part. It was a huge focus the last year on UX writing, because we didn't have like a function of UX writer at YouSign. So designers were doing the wording, PMMs were also doing the wording, PMs were also doing the wording. So a lot of people working on the words. So now there's a huge job around the design system of YouSign, and I think this is also part of like succeeding in PLG, is having like that product coherence from end to end, like the tone of voice, the design patterns, everything. And I think this is like something that is purely on the design side. And I'm gonna stop talking. It's gonna shut down. So yeah, UX writing as well, really, really important for me.
Yeah, interesting. You're talking about the design system. Like we also, with the system implementation, we change a little bit the way we have a design system since a few years. And we used to have a design system where we build components, but then every team can choose to use the component or not. Like it's a kind of a self-service design system. Now we reversed the design system so that we build a system, like with the designer. But when we build a system, we implement the system. That's why the cost also. Like it's accommodating the whole app. So it's not just self-service that, okay, you want to use it, but now since you introduce a new component, you have to change this component, this component, this component, and you accommodate everything. So it's increasing a bit the complexity, but like it's also like making the app super cohesive. You know, in the Apple thing, like it's like you have to be consistent everywhere. So it's part also like forcing us to really accommodate everywhere. Otherwise, you need to re-clean the app every 1 or 2 years, and that's not the same cost.
We're going to roll this out at the end of March, in case any of you are Qonto customers. So hopefully you'll have a moment of, wow, this makes sense.
Empty state.
Empty states. Yeah. My favorite thing is the empty state, that's why. Okay, cool. If there are no more burning questions, I think this is it. We are at time. So thank you so much for coming. I hope you took a little bit away from our experience so far on PLG. We are going to be here. There's going to be pizza and beers, from what I understand. So if you guys want to just go through, we'll stay a bit around. In case you have additional questions, don't hesitate to come over. But thanks for coming.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Theresa.
guys.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thanks for having us.